Welcome to From the Ashes, the Dungeon Crawler Network podcast all about Ashes of Creation by Intrepid Studios. Bear witness to the rebirth of the MMORPG genre from the ashes of an industry that has left the gamers behind. I am your host and the founder of the Dungeon Crawler Network himself, Aggelos, and with me again, because I brought him along for another Phoenix Roundtable, that's Isarii, the Errant Penman. How are you, sir?
Good. And if you think I'm going to let you get away with talking about yourself in the third person there, unassailed, you're wrong, sir. Wrong.
I'm going to do it anyway. That other lovely voice you hear is Elloa, friend of the network and a close personal friend of mine. She's amazing. How are you, Elloa?
Thank you so much. I'm very fine. How can I be not fine after such an introduction?
Well, I have to butter you up a little bit because of what we're going to talk about, so I have to make sure you'll like me enough so by the end of this you don't hate me at the end. So
it's going to be challenging. Let's go. I'm ready.
And also a new face for everyone here, the one, the only college student extraordinaire, insane person who loves calculus for some odd reason, and I guess streamer as well. That would be ChibiBree. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I just threw that all in there because I don't really know why anyone would like calculus. That seems weird. But anyway, that's all right.
It's a love-hate relationship.
Definitely a defining character trait there. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, really. Loves calculus. Oh, okay. All right. So, obviously, if this is the first time that you've actually seen this show, the Phoenix Roundtable is our community segment, and I have an eyelash in my eye. I thank you to the cat. This is where we get people from outside the Dungeon Crawler Network community, with the exception of Isarii, because Isarii is, my slave.
I'm an internal and external person.
That is true. He does a lot. I just add to his resume of online things. But we like to find people from outside of our DCN community itself. We bring them together to talk about various things that pertain to Ashes of Creation, larger meta topics, and some stuff like that. Now, this show is going to be kind of fun because there's been a lot of conversation, I guess, lately about a very particular topic for Ashes of Creation, and that is the inclusion of open world PvP. Some people, like myself, for instance, are in love with the idea, while some other people, like Chibi down there on the bottom, she absolutely would hate the idea, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Which is why, if you look at the camera structure, I'm at the top, she's at the bottom. We had to be as far apart from each other as possible because we are on opposite sides of the spectrum, and maybe
so that you could visually condescend as well, not just rhetorically.
Yes, absolutely. So, all right. So before we actually begin, I want to go ahead and kind of ask each person kind of what their standard thoughts are on PvP in general before we hop into a couple of the big questions that we have. I'm actually going to let Chibi go first. All right. Just throw you in there.
So, I'm generally against PvP. I don't find it enjoyable, mainly because I'm used to doing PvE content, and when you're expecting to be able to go mine a node, for example, you don't want to also worry about being jumped at the same time.
Or do you?
Or do you? I come from World of Warcraft, primarily background. I've been playing it for almost 10 years now, and I play on a PvE server. And the thing with World of Warcraft is you have to have two different types of armor sets, one for PvE if you plan to do PvE, and one for PvP if you plan to hold your own. So it's harder for me to stick to the rating schedule and have my gear score up there when I'm not really enjoying the PvP side. So.
Isarii kind of jumped in there, and I actually am really glad that he did, because for a few months now, I've played World of Warcraft for a very long time as well. Not quite 10 years, because off and on, really. AC to Pandaria, and then after Pandaria hit, it was just a hit or miss. But I know Isarii, we jumped back in for Legion, and I got a lot of crap from Isarii for playing on a PvE server. So Isarii, why don't you go next?
Well, I just didn't want to play with you on your boring server. But
That is
well, no,
true.
because of the server. Because of the server. But yeah. So I
honestly think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B there, but okay.
Yeah. I suppose. Probably. Now, first of all, I do agree, by the way, that PvE, PvP gear separation is a horrible system, and it definitely turns people off to open world PvP and WoW, because, you know, if it's maybe something, it doesn't create opportunities for people to really dabble in PvP or to experience it on an even footing unless they sort of really dedicate their time to PvP and to getting that gear set and to progressing in it specifically. So a lot of the times in a game like WoW, if you're just going along and minding your own business and PvP happens, you're automatically kind of nudged towards the losing side, and that doesn't really incline you to go try more of it, which is a shame. So I don't know. I don't like WoW almost at all in terms of PvP, which isn't to say it's bad, but it's definitely just not my preference at all. There's so many things about it I don't like, and I think since that's sort of the starting point that a lot of people jump into the genre from, it's why a lot of people think, oh god, open world PvP without factions, that's going to be even worse. Because when you're playing WoW on a PvP server, it's, you know, you're red, you're dead. That's how faction games typically work. If you're playing a game like The Elder Scrolls Online, where everybody goes into a PvP zone and then has factions assigned based on character creation, again, it's pretty much you're red, you're dead. That's how everybody does it.
No,
but
you're wrong. If you're red, you win. And if you're blue and yellow, you're dead. Pact.
You know what I mean. You know, people see a flag player that they can kill, and then they do, because that's how games with these sort of artificial assigned factions tend to work out. But the reasons I enjoy free-for-all and open PvP games is because they don't usually work like that. And there are, of course, some people that are going to go about and just kill everybody that they see. But in a game, and this is actually a quote from a WoW dev, but in an open world PvP game, nowhere is it more true than that there are PvP solutions to PvP problems. And in an open world PvP game where there aren't factions imposed on you, those PvP solutions begin to happen. And if you're in a guild that's known for just going out and killing everybody randomly, or spawn camping people, or killing lobies, you're going to have a hard time showing yourself in polite society without the self-righteous ganging up on you. And I enjoy this in a way that I think of people that enjoy PvP and say WoW don't. So people that are really into PvP and WoW, it's sort of MOBA-esque. They tend to be really into ladders and progression and having that type of reward-driven PvP betterment. And I like open world PvP because it's a completely different experience than that. It's more community-driven. It's the type of PvP for somebody that's really into the social scene or a game's community or role play, because all of those things just sort of organically play a part in an open PvP scene where players actually have the agency. I'm finally reaching the point to decide, these are my friends, these are my enemies. And it's not a button that you clicked at character creation that chooses that. It's who has treated you well, who has treated you wrong, who are you friends with, who's a dick in trade chat. Those are the types of things that sort of organically form factions in an open world PvP game, and I find that really compelling. But, you know, I don't want to put too rosy-eyed, two rose-colored lenses on this, because it's definitely unavoidable that somebody's going to PK you. But it's not as often as you might think. It's not going to be like WoW, where every time you see a Horde player coming, if you're a Filthy Alliance player, that Horde player is going to kill you. Because people tend to put a lot more thought into who they're killing and why, in most cases.
Given that smile, I'm assuming Chibi's Alliance.
Actually, I recently transferred from Horde to Alliance because the friends that are left are on the Alliance side, and I didn't want to play Horde by myself, so... I'll take one for the team.
And Elloa, now I know you look at games very differently than almost anybody that I know, which is a good thing, actually, but I'm curious to see what your, I guess, initial thoughts are when you're looking at Ashes of Creation as a game that does have free-for-all PvP.
Well, the thing is that I'm a relaxed, peaceful, social player. in general. I'm not against PvP. Sometimes I can enjoy it. The reason why I don't enjoy it is mostly because I suck. So if I was against people that were as bad as me and I could kill them, I guess I will enjoy it a lot more. But as it's generally not the case, and I mostly get killed very easily, I'm an easy target, and I get easily stressed in those kind of situations. I'm not a good PvPer, and so I do not really enjoy PvP for that reason. Now, the concept of Ashes of Creation needs PvP in its concept, because it is a game about construction and destruction, and if you do not have destruction, you cannot rebuild different things. So I get that, but I also very much in favor of leaving people in peace when they want to just be by themselves doing their own stuff. And so I'm very in favor of anti-griefing system that can be put in place.
And we're going to talk about one of those anti-griefing systems here in just a little bit that they're going to bring in. I kind of want to talk about this one as well because it's neither here nor there. Some people think it will work. I tend to think it works for what it is, but we'll go into that in a second. But as for myself, I'm actually not. I wouldn't even count myself as a PvP player. I actually prefer PvE for the majority of my gameplay. I'm a raider. Back in I guess I was a raider before I got old, had a kid, job, all that fun stuff. Which I wouldn't give up my kid for anything. He's the best. But I can't dedicate the amount of time to do the type of raiding that I did once upon a time. I was top 25 US in World of Warcraft during Wrath, which was kind of like its heyday-ish area. So there's a lot of competition at that point. And that was one of those periods where it was like 8 to 10 hours a day, especially when new raid content came out. And yeah, I was able to do those kind of things. That is not the case anymore. But I still prefer that type of content over PvP. I actually do not like structured PvP of any kind. I think battlegrounds are stupid and redundant. I don't think they serve a purpose. It's one of those things, if you're going to do a battleground, why don't you just go play, I don't know, something else like For Honor or, any of those games that are specifically for a battle arena. That's me. I don't think they're interesting. I don't find it fun. But open world PvP, on the other hand, is something that I really do like. And I think a lot of that comes from what I would say. I'm not a role player per se. I will not sit in a tavern and type out a story. That is not what I do. But I like to consider myself more of an immersion style player, where I do envision myself within the world, acting as I would if I were in such a world. So I guess it is role playing. I just won't sit in a tavern. And I actually love the idea of open world PvP just because, it is, it draws a parallel to the real world, right? Especially nowadays, not to get political or anything, but there is that area of, there's danger when you go outside, anytime you go outside, regardless of where you're at. And you need to be, aware of the person who may steal from you or, mug you in the back streets and dark alleys. And I like that level of, I guess heightened awareness is a good term. And it's one of my favorite things when I played ESO. Imperial City was one of my favorite areas, specifically because I went in to do PvE stuff. I went in to do the sewers. I went in to hunt the banner bosses. I enjoyed that. But that sense that you always had to be on the edge of your seat looking out for when the bananas or the blueberries came running around the corner, that was something that kept me involved in the game, that kept me, not watching Netflix on my other monitor kind of thing. Like, you were there, you were always aware. And that is something that I really love. Plus, whenever I do get into the PvP mode, if you ask anyone within the DCN guild, I tend to giggle like a little schoolgirl as I run around happily slaughtering people. So I do tend to run into that as well. Yeah, I think I have some streams of us playing ESO in Imperial City, and I'm just giggling like a little girl as I'm running around stabbing people in Imperial City. So yeah, I am fond of that. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and jump into player versus player. We all know what it is. It's evident. And by its very definition. So we're not going to really go into that as the question I posted earlier. I just wrote it down quickly. what I really want to ask is, based on the type of players we have, we know there's going to be different types of PvP within Ashes of Creation. Obviously, we got the free-for-all PvP, which I kind of want to hold off on a little bit because we're going to talk about the karma system a little later. But I know they mentioned they're going to have some sort of structured battlegrounds or arena systems, as well as sieges. What are your guys' thoughts on those? And do you think one will play a bigger role within Ashes of Creation? And how are you, as the type of player that you are, will you interact, or what could they do to make you want to interact? So, Isarii, why don't you go ahead and go first?
I would say that my expectation is that neither of those is going to be sort of at the forefront of, I guess, just PvP itself in Ashes of Creation. I think battlegrounds are going to kind of exist as kind of a side activity that you can do. At least that's how I would like them to be, where it's not a heavily developed part of the game. Ideally, it's just, an extra bonus activity for people that want to go in and have some sort of balanced PvP, which is useful to have for people that are, working on builds and group compositions and things like that. Meanwhile, sieges, obviously not. Everything that they've said indicates that it's going to take weeks and weeks to try to build up a siege of a large node, and and then it will be weeks and weeks before it can happen again, irrespective of whether or not it's successful. So I don't really see that being like your everyday bread and butter either. I know you and I talked beforehand a little bit when certain people were looking at getting into the Ashes of Creation community very early on, and they were like, yes, the game has sieges. That could be the game for us. We love that type of PvP. And, very early on, they would say, no, you're not going to be able to run from keep to keep to keep to keep like you might in certain other games. They want all of these things to have meaning. So I guess for what I think is going to be your everyday PvP, it is going to have to be open world, even though you don't want to talk about it that much, because that's what it's going to be. And it's going to be PvP that's informed by whatever PvE you're trying to do. So it might be ganking gathers or running away from gankers while you're gathering. I think the trade system with the caravans is, obviously sort of the objective here with these roving battle zones. I think the design idea is for that to be your main source of everyday PvP. And how it works out, I guess we'll see.
And something I forgot to mention, we'll have the sieges of the nodes, but they specifically said castles exist, and that castles will be more of a siege mechanic that is on a much more frequent cooldown. Do you think castle sieges are something that may fill that gap for the people who like that, destruction siege type mechanics?
It'll be interesting to see how they're incentivized, I suppose. They certainly could be.
Yeah, it all depends. And obviously, if controlling a castle means you control some part of the player government for a node, that may be a driving factor, especially between big guilds. Elloa, what about you?
Well, I'm not enjoying at all siege kind of gameplay in other games, like Guild Wars 2. World versus Worlds was really annoying me extremely. Zero Deal in ESO annoys me a lot too. I'm not interested into that.
Can I ask why? That's a fun conversation.
Okay, I find it absolutely boring. Not interesting. There's nothing fun to it. Like I don't see myself the fun of getting on a trebuchet, throwing stuff there, having a zerg, avoiding it, trying to counter it or whatever. I don't see the purpose. Why? Because it's like being in a playground. You go, especially that you're playing castle and stuff, and as I do not enjoy the mechanic of it, I do not enjoy the purpose of it. In Ashes of Creation, it might be different in the sense I'm not someone that wants and is interested into the PvP aspect of Ashes of Creation. That's not what attracts me in the game at all. But if I'm building my city with my friends, with the community, and I really like this city, I really like the place, I really like my home I've built there, I want to know the next stage of the story or whatever reason there, then I may want to defend the city if someone is attacking it. I will have a real incentive to participate to an activity that I don't like because I will really have a feeling, an attachment to this place, and I want to continue. I think that's the only way where I could get involved into PvP and Ashes of Creation if it take me by the guts that I want to defend my place.
Right.
See, that's how we fool you into being one of us. It's PvP informed by PvE and vice versa. And it just makes it so much more meaningful than I agree about Guild Wars 2 and ESO. I think they're both pretty bad examples of Siege PvP because they feel so meaningless. It's just castles that flip every 10 minutes or less. It's not fun.
Well, I know when
it feels bland.
It does, and and that's from that type of speed gameplay that's brought in. And I know that when ESO first came out, I know, sorry, you probably remember this, because they specifically said they want keeps to have a meaning, right? Remember that? We don't want keeps to flip left and right? It has to have a meaning, because originally they were going to hide guild stores into those things. Remember that once upon a time when guild stores were tied to keep ownership? It just devolved into what it is now, which was, and I honestly think it's a lot based on the not creative director, game director, who was one of the main guys for Dark Age of Camelot, and that's essentially what it is. It's Dark Age of Camelot with the Elder Scrolls lore over it. So
we'll always have the Chalamo, at least. The
Chalamo, indeed we will. We're immortalized in a book. And ChibiBree. All right. So, not being a PvPer, do you not enjoy structured PvP at all? Like, is that something you would go into?
Actually, I would say the opposite. I would say I enjoy structured a little bit more. Okay. It puts me in a mindset where I'm ready for it. I'm knowing that it's coming. I can get the appropriate gear together. I can make sure that, I might suck still because I'm generally a healer, so that might change though, because it seems that the cleric is going to be paralleled to the discipline priest from World of Warcraft, with some slight changes, which seems really interesting to me. I view things like the caravan more like a world event rather than open PvP. It's something that happens when your structured node wants to bring supplies to trade over to a neighbor node, and so knowing that you are weak against anybody that could come and attack your caravan is kind of an exciting thing. Although I probably would not go with a caravan. I'd be more open to the idea of it, because it's known with the challenge of bringing the caravan across that will happen. So you kind of know the risk of what will happen, rather than just, I'm out gathering silk, for my profession, and suddenly I'm dead.
Speaking of the fact that you talked about gathering silk, it kind of leads us into exactly the next point that we had. So, nice. PvE driving PvP content. What does it mean? And, what can it mean for the game? Now, this is something Isarii kind of brought up right off the bat. Sorry, I'm going to go ahead and let you do your spiel because you're always so good at this.
Yes, I actually want to pull back a little bit.
Okay.
Since to shamelessly plug my content on Ashen Foundry, where I wrote about PvE and PvP sort of interplay in the game, and one of the things I talked about was the way that a lot of prior, especially theme park MMOs, really like to divvy things up into little boxes. And one of the big ones is PvE and PvP. And PvE, PvP gear separations are a really big example of this. But it's really easy to start to think of content, and you're like, this is PvE content, this is PvP content. And I think, Chibi, you were starting to do a little bit of that when you were talking about caravans and how you see them. And it's both. And I think a lot of the content, when you look at the nodes, that's both PvE and PvP. Caravans, clearly both PvE and PvP content. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be the main driving design philosophy behind a lot of the systems in Ashes of Creation, is that they do want it to be both. They want players and non-playable characters to interact in the system in a very similar way, which is, I would say, kind of necessary to having a believable virtual world. We don't have this NPC PC separation in the real world because there's no analog to that. So if you want it to feel like a real world where what you're going in means something and just have it be immersive and believable, I think those little boxes sort of need to be pulled away. And that doesn't always mean it's great from a game design perspective, but I think that's what Ashes of Creation is trying to do. And it won't be for everybody, but it seems to be the plan here. So what was the question again?
Yeah, you more or less hit it at that point. I mean, like you said, there's going to be things in the world that are going to drive PvP conflict. ChibiBree's down there, she's collecting her silk. Well, here's the thing, something that I've not really seen in a modern game, and I know Isarii will probably throw up his favorite game reference here in a little bit, but the idea of finite resources will very much draw PvP to an area, because if Chibi's down there doing her thing, she's got her node with her guild and all that fun stuff, but she's like the sole proprietor of any kind of silk goods because no one else has it. That makes her a prime target, and PvP is naturally going to happen because, I mean, if you look at it, player conflict normally arrives, there's always a precursor to what causes player conflict, and that's, you have something I want, and now the only way for me to get it, because I'm not willing to give you anything in return, is to take it. And therefore, you got
I would like to jump on that.
Okay.
This system is really dependent of the community that you will find in each server, and that's where it's very interesting, because you will have people that will be very aggressive and that will have exactly this kind of mentality. I want the silk, I'm going to punch your face to get it. And you will have other community, hopefully, that are more on a collaborative teamwork kind of mentality. And I really hope to avoid the badass I'm going to hit your face kind of server, to go to something more peaceful, more respectful, with kind people. Nice. That doesn't mean that there will be no PvP at all, but maybe the mentality will be more into something about collaborating. And I'm really, really excited about this, because Ashes of Creation and the system, how the game is set up, will be an extraordinary laboratory to understand and observe human nature in action, and to see how different kind of society can work together or can create war. And this can even help us to understand human nature in general. I think that the person that will observe those server, the developers, must really, enjoy themselves so much from a philosophical point of view or ethnological point of view. It will be very, very interesting. And I hope that I will be on a server where I can help to foster a collaborative kind of nice community.
Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that what's unique about Ashes of Creation specifically is that there is a community where you can buy and sell trade. What you're buying is varied. For example, using the original example of me being the sole proprietor of silk, I have the right to set the silk price at whatever price I want, and by that means I could hire, say, a mercenary, somebody to guard me while I go and mine this stuff, because I personally am not that good at PvP either. And until I can get the better gear, until I can get stronger at PvP, I might need a bodyguard. And that's what I think is awesome about just this open world where there's nodes that are neighboring that could either be enemy nodes or they could be friendly nodes. And there might be certain guilds that their only mission is to go out and get that bounty, or their only mission is to sell their services, sell their abilities at PvP in order to benefit people that are not so great at that.
It's funny that you say that, because I actually know several people who plan on doing just that thing. But actually, to play off both what Elloa said and what Chibi said, because I thought it was really good. Here's the thing with trade, and this is always the thing with trade. If anyone's read some of the I guess more classical literature here. I'm trying to think of one in particular, and for some odd reason, Grapes of Wrath is coming to mind, but even though it wasn't really resources in general. But the idea was someone had the power and means to create unfavorable circumstances for other people. Chibi being the sole owner of any kind of silk product. At one point, you're right, she is the trade person, and Elloa brought in the idea of this collaborative commune kind of... I love Elloa, the hippie that she is. But anyway, I do love YOLO, you know that. But the idea of the community, yes, that can work. But human nature, and I know we talked about this very early on, and this is one of my favorite parts about this game, and one of my favorite things to talk about is human nature. Human nature is first and primary is self-preservation, right? And however that is, if you're the sole owner of silk, and I need silk, yes, I'm willing to trade up until a point where it inconveniences me, right? Like, right. Yeah, at that point, yeah, you are hiring guards, right? But how long and how far can people push other people until you have riots on your hands? I mean, right. Look at what one of the movies, Hunger Games, or the books, The Hunger Games, where, you know, one person controlled almost everything, and everyone else just got divvied out crap until such a time they just couldn't take it anymore and push back. That is... Trade does work until you start getting that trade deficit problem where, okay, it's no longer beneficial for me to trade with you because you're just out. You know, I can't. You have a monopoly.
Don't use economic words you don't know.
No, you're right. But you have a monopoly on
you're
such
upsetting me.
I know. I always make you angry.
I think real life analogs, especially when it comes to human nature and things like self-preservation, do fly a little bit out the window in a game with infinite respawns, i.e. a game. Self-preservation as a concept is a little bit undermined at that point.
I think you're wrong on that part. I think self-preservation in a game like this, it does, you don't throw it out. You're right. There is infinite respawns, right? But there's still that layer of, I want what's best for me. And because there's infinite respawns, you're not as scared to step up against the person who is, you know, has the monopoly anymore, because who cares? I'll just come back and do it again. That's what kind of pushes people in real life back down, is the fear of death, or, you know, whatever, you know, fear of some sort of negative repercussions for their actions that they're not willing to take anymore. You have to hit that point where what you're willing to tolerate is above your fear of retaliation. In a game, that's a little different, because you're like, you're right, I don't care if they retaliate, I'll just keep coming back and back and back. But my idea is, I want to better myself. I want better gear, I want better nodes, I want better prices, and I'm going to take them however I can do it.
In my experience, I generally see people in these sort of free-for-all games come together naturally into like big clumps of players, where guilds sort of roll into alliances, and you typically do have sort of like the good guys that you know, take a stand against spawn camping and lobby killing and ganking and things like that, and come together and hunt out the guilds that are known for such things. And then you do have the guilds that are known for such things and do tend to group together. And the concentration of each that you have on your server can be affected by how wisely you choose that server. If all of the competitive guilds, I don't know that we have them as much anymore, but guilds like Ruin, back in the day, the Goons, wherever they end up, if you roll onto their server and they are going to all cluster together, you're going to have a lot less of the good guys than you would if you were to choose, say, the unofficial RP server, which is still going to have the bad guys, but in my experience, it generally has a lot of more people that are sort of community focused in general, and is actually usually where I end up because it's more fun.
That's exactly what you saw at the release or the pre-release of Arcade and Black Desert, which are the two games we can compare the most to Ashes of Creation, considering that Steven Sarif was a very big Arcade player. Again, it's just fair. It's very interesting to see how Arcade was working, because it was a sort of sandbox game, but with a lot of, more caveats or limited functions to be able to do your stuff. So it's not completely free, but the North American server, according to my source, were absolutely terrible, because the people were were getting intently the biggest plot of space to put their house, because they will ensure that there will be less house on the same plot, so they would favorize and destroy the market. So it was done intently to grieve other, just to place your house in a shitty way, so there will be less plays, there will be more competition.
While I can confirm that was a thing.
Yeah, I know it was too.
On the Korean server, it was exactly the contrary. Everyone was positioning its house very nicely so people could have its emplacement and everything.
To be fair, us Americans aren't taught geometry in schools, so maybe we just don't have the spatial reasoning to do that correctly.
I don't know.
Could have been 100% unintentional.
But I know I was on the European server and they were doing that kind of things. And that's why I dislike Arcade, because I thought the feature of the game were fostering bad behavior and toxicity. I cannot speak tonight. It's too late. Well, basically bad behavior between players and people not being nice with each other. But you can see, like exactly Isarii described, you have generally before those game release, you have all the guilds that want to have a fair, nice dynamic PvP. They go all on the same server. They are organizing themselves. You have the big Zerg guilds like goons probably, or like very giant guild that have several guilds because they are too big. They go on other server, and then you can form your little community somewhere else. And that's often what happens in this kind of game, that you have the nice guild that try to find a moderate server to get on. And I think that will happen in Ashes of Creation as well.
One thing that's interesting is, before I forget, in games like this, by the way, just so that people who might not have experienced it know, your guild usually is specifically telling you like a list of this is who you can kill, this is who you can't kill. That's very explicitly stated. In some guilds are going to be like, yeah, kill whoever you want, except maybe these 3 guilds that are our allies, and others will be like, these are the ones you can kill. Don't kill anybody else unless they start it. And it's interesting. I think it's a much more meaningful way to do PvP, but I guess I do have some concerns about how well it would work in a modern MMO, not in terms of design, but in terms of the people who play MMOs now are just in a lot of ways a lot less interested in the community. I think back to some of the games I've played where players had to re-roll their character because they were so hated. And everywhere they went, everybody would just kill them constantly because they had been like a notorious ganker or something like that, and they either quit the game or re-rolled in secret, which is I've seen people be punished for that activity really badly.
I've seen people having their secret alt to be us all in those kind of games.
Yeah, that's it if the game allows it. Yeah, but it's, I don't know that people these days are necessarily as engaged as we were back then with the server community. And it remains to be seen if designing a game around this kind of gameplay brings that back, or if it's more of a generational, and I don't mean that in an ageist way, but
darn millennials. Sorry, Chibi.
And me. And you. Shut up.
I'm an old soul, okay? I'm a very old soul.
Yeah, I don't know if people are even that interested in getting to know the other people on the server that well. If we'll see that sort of policing happen in a way that's as effective as it used to be. I was talking with Steven Mesner, who writes for PC Gamer. You know him.
I know. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking with him at the PC Gamer party at PAX, and we were talking about sort of the place of the MMO. Man, this is a good Isarii tangent right now. Like, we're way off. Whatever. This is one of my worst ones ever. Yeah, the place of the MMO sort of in the genre, because, we've seen it contract, less games are being made. There's only one AAA game being developed ostensibly by New World, by Amazon Games, which is New World. We don't even know if it's going to be any good. So,
we don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I take, or anything about it at all. I take the perspective that the MMO offers something very unique, and it is these sprawling communities, and that the genre can't really die because it's offering something that no other genre, pretty much by definition, can offer. And I think that there are people, and there will always be people, who will be interested in getting into that if games are designed around capitalizing on that feature, which games like WoW, no offense, that constantly corral people into the tiny little 10-man, 20-man instances don't really take advantage of. That's functionally not super different than a game like Dauntless or Monster Hunter or League of Legends to me, when you're playing in these small organized groups. So he says that he had been talking to Richard Garriott, who was, I'm going to get this wrong, help me, Aggelos, before I say it wrong.
Shroud of the Avatar, and he did Ultima. Yes, he was Ultima Online. Yeah.
And he has the perspective that MMOs are kind of in the MySpace stage, where they were really interesting and novel to people, where it was a new thing that had come into the world, that type of social media and online social interaction, and you got to meet strangers in chat rooms and things like that, these people these days have no interest in at all because they've just grown up with it, and all of their friends are already online, and they don't need to go online and make friends. And I don't know who's right. I'm not going to sit here and argue with Richard Garriott, but I am optimistic that he is wrong on that, and that there is a place, and that maybe in Ashes of Creation, I'm looping this back in, we will be able to, through strength of game mechanics, have a community that's strong enough where your actions in the game world with other players are actually meaningful, and negative reinforcement, if you're being a dick, can sort of stave off that behavior.
This is why I let Isarii
loop that back in.
Yeah, no, this is why I let Isarii go on rants, and only Isarii, because he leaves breadcrumbs that he eventually he gets lost in the woods for a little bit, and then he finds his way back, and we're all good.
I totally start backtracking at the end of it. It's pretty funny.
I like it.
The points I just made.
So now the next part that is something I wanted to bring up, and probably going to be the last part because I'm looking at the notes here and where we're at in time. And I honestly think we've answered some of these other questions. This is something that I know has been a big issue. I'll say an issue. It's a point of contention in the community because I've heard a lot of people, some people who I respect and some people who I do not, who I think are stupid. There's my PvP part of it, and who think that karma systems do not work. They're just like, and I love these. I love how they always refer to any game that has open world PvP as gank boxes regardless of this, and I think that is very narrow-minded, and I think they're stupid. But anyway, I'm not going to give names, but you'll probably know who I'm talking about.
There will be ganking. I mean, it just depends on your tolerance, I suppose, and whether you can see that potential for danger as something that's value-adding to your gameplay experience to keep you on your toes like you talked about earlier, or if it's something that you can't tolerate at all. And the balance that's struck by the game itself with, are you getting ganked every 2 minutes when you walk out of the city, or is it something that happens maybe every couple hours?
That again will depend on the community where you are. It will depend if you have a nicer community or a kinder community, more peaceful sort of community that have some fair play kind of PvP, which is more consensual or something. In majority, of course, you will always have some bad apples. Or if you have a good reaction of the community, you have a group of ganker, and then suddenly you have mercenaries, protective guild that's pop up because people need to defend themselves. And that will be interesting to see how everyone will find out their solution to the problem. And hopefully it will not be too salty and because it's the game. If I'm playing Ash of Creation, I accept the rules. I know that I'm going to be killed, and I will play with the tools that are at my disposal. The karma system, I'm not in the mood of fighting. I'm not going to fight, and you're going to get your karma. And that's it. So I'm not going to be fair and start to duel you because you wanted to engage me. I don't want PvP. I don't want you PvP. You attack me, too bad for your face. And I will take that advantage. And if it's too aggressive on my server, maybe I will change server, or maybe I will organize more protective guilds, or maybe I will learn to PvP. I don't know. No, maybe not. That's too much work.
It might happen.
There will be solution and tools, and your imagination is the limit. So
I love how she immediately went to one of the mechanics of the karma system of whether or not you engage or not determines whether or not you're a combatant.
Oh, you're trying to get your question finished, aren't you?
Huh? What?
I said you're trying to actually get your starting point of the discussion finished now, aren't you?
Yeah, no, well, yeah, I'm trying to make sure we stay on topic at this point. But no, it's neat because they're, like you said, the way that the karma system has been described to us, that whenever you are a non-combatant attacking another non-combatant, if they fight back, all of a sudden you're both combatants, and karma system is a lot less. But if you kill an innocent player or a non-combatant in that case, you tend to rack up this karma system. Now, the karma will negatively affect your character. Now, Chibi. I'm bringing Chibi into this because Chibi hasn't said a whole lot. She's so nice down there, non-combative, which is kind of, works with the fact that, she doesn't like PvP. Do you feel, and I really want to know what your thoughts are, do you see a karma system helping your gameplay out at all? Like, would this be something that you feel will be enough to make it so you enjoy?
Yes, I do. In fact, I've talked to a couple of guilds. They're discussing, instead of your example earlier where I was the soul holder of the silk, instead sending a group of us out there mixed with some PvPers, and together we'll all farm this specific node or whatever. But what I like about that is, say somebody else who's really good at PvP comes along and maybe our PvP defense is a little weak. Every innocent person that he kills, for example, if he kills all of us farmers, then we're not responding and we're non-combatant, then every time that he kills an additional person, he gets weaker, the karma increases, and etc. So when he dies, I believe he suffers a lot more the more that he attacks, as well as he is no longer as strong the more that he attacks the non-combatants. I feel like this is a good way to keep from what happens sometimes in World of Warcraft or other games. I did try Grand Theft Auto Online once. That was immediately over. I got killed numerous times over and over and over, and for me, the reason why it makes me stay away from PvP is every time I return to my body, I don't want to get immediately killed again and then assume that I'll have to log off for an hour or so until that person moves on. At the same time, it will also, as that person gets the bounty, it also make me want to kind of join in a little bit to have my revenge, because they've racked up a bounty now, and now I can participate without any repercussions for them killing me, and I can help kill them back and essentially like have my little revenge. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Isarii looked like he had a thought, maybe.
It was more like medicine, but
oh.
I really like the idea of bounty. The bounty system in general, because there are absolutely players out there who are going to take great pride in hunting down gankers and red flag players. I've been known to do that in the Arcade localization alpha. I spent a lot of time just like getting a group of guildies together, and we would go run through the lower level zones, the first ones where people were flagged, and just kill high level enemy players that they're killing our people. Anytime we saw that flagged, not flagged, but the aggressor tag on someone, we just wiped them out and then moved on. And you get into a lot of big battles that way. They start killing one person, R2 people shows up and kills them, and then the next thing you know, entire guilds are there tearing that zone apart. And I find that really fun. It's unpredictable, it's unscripted, it's a lot more interesting and dynamic than any other form of PvP, and it only happens because of the way that the PvP interacts with the PvE. So it has to be unexpected.
And
I'd say...
Oh, go ahead, Chib.
Thank you. Sorry. I'd say that Ashes is actually one of the first one, aside from, say, Overwatch, which is completely PvP. It's meant to be PvP. But Ashes is the first game I'm considering being open to PvP as an experience, since it's tied so deeply into the entire gaming experience. And obviously, as you had said before, sorry, it's not going to be like World of Warcraft at all. So because World of Warcraft's PvP system is what I'm used to, I'm open to a newer system and trying it again.
I hope I'm not steering you guys wrong with my sort of positivity about, like, even if you're not really a big PvP person, I think this adds to the world experience, which is
and I
why
feel the same way.
Interested in this game.
That doesn't mean that we will be spared from being annoyed by PvP sometimes. I know that there's a day where I'm absolutely not in the mood of being bothered. I don't have time to lose with PvP stuff. What? I want to discover my dungeon. I want to enjoy the scenery, whatever is in my mind. And I know that sometimes someone will maybe come ruin my game, and that's okay. That day I will not play Ashes of Creation. I will play Final Fantasy or something like that, where I'm ensured to have my peace. But I really hope that the system put in place and will avoid griefing, because that's what's really annoying. It's not so much the genuine PvP that will occur because we want to invade that city to get something, to get our node growing, or we want to take that caravan because this, or we want to control our land. This is or silk farm. Get out. That's kind of fun, but what's not fun is griefing people that are genuinely wanting to piss you off. There's people like that, and so I hope this karma system will punish them long enough to discourage that kind of behavior at some point at least, and to have the bounty system will encourage players to hunt down those kind of players, and they will be well done, because PvP is fair game. That's part of the game. Griefing is never nice because it's always being mean towards another player. And it's important to remember we are all person. We all have feelings, and we all want to enjoy yourself after a long day of work or whatever is the reason. And we are not there to be annoyed by other.
Pretty much. Yeah. Kind of in closing here, I'm going to wrap this up with a little bit of a little, I guess, a parable, I guess that's what I'm going to use here. I know Steven Sharif has brought in, and this is kind of like their tagline for everything they do within Ashes of Creation, and that is everything needs to have a purpose. And as Elloa said, when you're out there PvE driving the PvP, so PvP with a purpose, going after the silk because that's the only place you can get it, it's a purpose. There's a reason. Taking over a city because you want to advance your city, see what happens at the end, there's a purpose. Going into a low-level zone, killing people for no other reason, that is not a purpose, and that's where Karma System hopefully will help, take that away. There's really no reason to do these things just to ruin someone's gameplay. So seeing Karma will be something.
The thrill of battle.
The thrill of battle is when someone fights back.
Yeah, exactly. Because you very easily find people that don't want to PvP, and when you're eating on lobbies, all you want is just piss off someone. It has nothing
Still,
nice
though,
in it.
Sometimes it's not so bad.
So we obviously
one of my favorite WoW experiences from years ago. We went to Goldshire. Is that the starting zone?
Yeah,
and we took like a level 10 horde character with us, and there were like 4 paladins, and we escorted him right into the starter area, and we were flagged obviously, and the alliance brand new character started attacking him, and his name was Epic Raid Boss, and he was a Tauren, and we all just sat there and healed him while the lobbies, like 30 of them, tried to kill him, and I think that was a great experience for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Well, also what I like about the sieges is I believe, if my rumors are true, that there's also PvE options to be a part of the siege, whether it's to help build things back up and whatnot. So if you're not into the PvP necessarily, you can still be a part of the siege without being flagged. Just gotta hope you don't die,
Well,
flagged is an interesting word.
The flagged I like, but during a siege, I know they've specifically said, and I don't mean to rain on your parade here, but they've specifically said that when a siege is going on, people will be given warning, but once the siege officially commences, anyone within the circle of the influence of the siege is automatically a combatant.
Right.
So,
but
I mean,
you don't have to fight if you don't want to.
No,
you might get killed, but
yeah, not direct combat.
Let's
you
put
definitely
yeah.
contributing, working on the supply chain. For example.
You can contribute in PvE ways, but don't expect the karma system to protect you.
Right,
if you're in a
that's
siege. Yeah, you're right there.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess that kind of brings us to the end of this episode. So obviously we're going to go down through the list so I can let all of my awesome guests here, and you guys were all amazing tonight, tell people where they can find you and all that fun stuff. So let's go ahead and start not with Isarii. And Chibi, since you are, I guess, the newest guest at this point since I've worked with everyone else. So you go ahead and go first.
Thank you. I'm ChibiBree, and I sometimes stream. Right now, not so much because of college, but you can find me on Twitch at ChibiBree.
There we go. And Elloa.
Well, you can find me on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch TV at Elloa Wendy. I'm streaming regularly, almost every day, together with my boyfriend Nikki. We stream Final Fantasy XIV, Guild Wars 2, and what else we want, and that's about it.
All right. Isarii, go ahead and prepare your manuscript.
Okay. I do MMO content, so you can find me writing at MMOgames.com, MMORPG.com, Gamesbase.com, and I also have some fan site work over at TamrielTheFoundry.com for ESO and AshenFoundry.com here for Ashes of Creation. I podcast here on the DungeonCrawler.net, and you can find me on twitch.tv/Isarii, youtube.com/c/Isarii, or everything at errantpenman.com or twitter.com/EthanMcPhee, EthanMacFie. At this point, I just go through it because it's funny how long it is.
Yeah, right. I'm going to try to catch up at some point here because with all the DCN stuff. But of course, if you enjoyed this episode, you can check out everything that we do. DungeonCrawlerNetwork.com. You can find links to all of our social media, all of our streaming areas, all that fun stuff. But if you'd rather go there specifically, we got twitch.tv/Dungeon Network, youtube.com/Dungeon Network. Oh dear heaven, facebook.com/Dungeon Network. You get the gist. You find us. We're everywhere. Yeah, just look. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, I really do encourage everyone to go on out and leave us a rating or review on iTunes, because that really does help us out. It allows people to know that we are a real podcast, that we say words, and every once in a while it's relevant. Not often.
Or tell us you hate us on Reddit. We get that a lot too.
Yeah, we do get that a lot, but I mean, it's Reddit, so I feel like if anyone ever said anything good on Reddit,
dissenting opinions.
We don't bring enough dissenting opinions, but this one will be fun. All right. Thank you so much. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode of From the Ashes, and we will see you in Ashes of Creation. See you later, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Yeah.